about Palestine and Israel, the kind of opinion one forms is generally one of a long-standing confrontation between peoples of two religions, Islam and Judaism. And it is considered that since the Jews were promised this land, they have a right over it and therefore they are ruling it. The fact that in 1948 Israel was formed and the local population which was living there for more than 2000 years was slowly made to leave the area through force, and as a result a majority of them moved out to Jordan and some of them to the pre-96 West Bank and Gaza. After 1967, we find that after the annexation of these two areas, including Eastern Jerusalem, Israeli control was completed and Gaza was made a refugee camp, considering that 70% of the residents of today's Gaza are refugees. This being the condition, today, in the October of 2023, we have this attack by Hamas, which has been exceptional because it is the first effort of a group of the Palestinians who were so badly sidelined to express themselves as having some power. How that power was exercised, whether it was according to international law, needs to be deliberated. But one thing is clear. A few weeks ago, the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, speaking in the General Assembly of the UN, showed a map to the world. The map of Israel, and in that map, there was no West Bank and no Gaza. It was one single entity, the country of Israel. The Oslo Accords, signed in Oslo in the early 90s, very clearly mention that the Palestinians will have a nation of their own, and this is called the two-nation theory, where Israel as well as the Palestinians accepted the fact that each one of them respects the sovereignty of the other, and Israel needs to provide in the areas occupied in 1967 a separate state for the Palestinians, and Israeli borders would be limited to pre-1967 lands. Now when one-sidedly Israel renegades on this and wants to force it on the people after signing an accord, and the United States, which was involved in developing this two-nation theory, we find very, very obviously that there was no hope left, being continuously abused, being continuously made to grovel in the dust. The people rose in a particular manner. It is sad that lives are being lost on both sides. But it is also sad that violence has come to this area not because of the Palestinians, but because It was used for setting up Israel, expanding Israel, and now considering the two nation approach as something of the past and renegading on the promises given to the Palestinians and to Yasser Arafat, who negotiated this deal. Even a day ago, President Biden has spoken of the two nation theory, that there should be a nation, sovereign nation for the Palestinians in pre 1967 areas. There are UN resolutions for it. So now, looking at all this, we have to conclude that there will never be peace unless Israel recognizes this and immediately starts acting upon it, instead of trying to use force and showing that its strength is such that it can, by its own will, do anything it wants, even when breaking its own promise given to the international community in the Oslo Accords. So we now need to actually look at what is happening in this perspective, and it is very easy to find a solution if there is a will to find a solution. If violence be the only way, strength is the only way, pressure is the only way, terror is the only way, then this continuous cycle of violence will hamper the peace and security of not just Israel but the whole of Middle East, and as things now are looking, will and can impact the whole security of the international order. Things are getting from bad to worse. We humans are a single race from the point of view that we are born to single parents. We are children of Adam and Eve. Scientifically, this has been established. We have become communities, nations, tribes, but in us is that unity of being and coming from one single father and one single mother. Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam is what the Hindu scriptures say. The whole world is a single family, and it is true. They told that more than 2000 years ago, and after 2000 years, we find it scientifically proven. Similarly, the Quran says, we have created you from one man and one woman, and made you nations and tribes, so that you may know each other, work with each other. Unity is there in our souls, and that unity can be sustained only and only if trying to conquer others, pressurize others, terrorize others is not the priority, but to lead a peaceful and live a peaceful life, and peace for all is the criterion. If we can manage to do this, even in our context of India, which has fought wars with its two neighbors, we also need to understand that unity as a principle of modern day life needs to be accepted by all. When there is unity of thought, war, terror, all doesn't make any sense. But when unity of thought is not there, and if that unity is broken on the strength of nations, so then we have the rule of the jungle, the dominance of the powerful against the weak, not recognizing that the weak is also a brother, in the same way that our own people, tribes, among the Jews, among the Muslims, among the Hindus, all of us are one, need to be one, and think of protecting each other instead of harming each other. If that principle can be made a principle of international law, And more than international law, international moral and ethical law, there would be peace. And the idea of Shanti would be established as we do it in prayers when we say Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Now coming back to today's situation. Israel, this is the 11th day, is continually bombing Gaza, and the number of dead has crossed 2,800 and more than 8,000 dead on the Palestinian side in Gaza. 1,400 Israelis have lost their life, among them 299 being soldiers. The strange fact is that about 21% of those who lost their lives in Israel are soldiers, according to what the Israeli government has said. But when we look in Gaza, we find that hardly, if any, of the Hamas fighters has died in the raids. The air raids are killing children and women, who are more than half of the casualties. Nearly 800 children and 500 plus women have already died. The percentage of Hamas fighters who have been killed is hardly anything, maybe 2% or even less. So with this kind of collective punishment being given to the residents of Gaza is against international law. When you know that the collateral damage is 98%, and instead of taking out soldiers or fighters of Hamas, you are taking out babies, children, women, the old, and general ordinary civilians. This hardly gives any advantage to Israel. And each day of bombing is making its position more and more weak in the eyes of people at large, irrespective whether they are Muslims or not. Even among the Israelis, this is creating consternation. And they are concerned that if this continues, what would be the result? Europe, the United States, India initially supported Israel after the attack from Hamas. But now, even United States and India are speaking of the atrocities and the need to not escalate this war-like condition to a bigger conflict engulfing the whole of Middle East. We earnestly hope that the Israeli leadership, instead of working for its own political survival and benefit and creating this situation just to find itself in a better position vis-a-vis Hamas, is actually ruining the chance of long-term peace in the region. The Palestinians also now are feeling that if we attack, and this is for the first time that Palestinians have directly dealt with Israel. Intifadas one after another, we all remember, were children throwing stones at Israeli soldiers, using catapults and slings at tanks. This was Intifada. The images of Intifada still linger in our minds. It was a public revolt. It was not a military action. For the first time, the Palestinians, because in the 67 war and the 73 war, It were the governments of the area which were fighting the war. But today the Palestinians have inflicted a wound on Israel. This shows their capability, despite being crushed and put in an open prison, which is what Gaza is, a kind of a concentration camp. These are what it is being compared to. So even in that condition, if oppressed people can hit back, it is very clear. The writing is on the wall that peace can be the only alternative. Further trying to crush the 2.3 million people living in Gaza and trying to push them out into Sinai and trying to push the West Bank residents into Jordan would fail and fail miserably. I only pray for peace, peace and more peace. Thank you.